Imagine waking up every day with no place to call home. For over 280,000 people in the UK, this is their reality. And yet, the government continues to fail those in need. How is it possible that in a country with so many resources, the homeless crisis is getting worse instead of better? Despite the urgent need for action, the UK government's approach to homelessness remains shocking, offering temporary fixes that barely address the scale of the problem. Every year, more people are pushed to the streets, while affordable housing remains scarce and the support systems crumble under the pressure. What's going wrong? Is the government simply ignoring the crisis, or are there deeper issues at play? The truth is more disturbing than you might expect. The policies that should be helping are actually keeping people trapped in a vicious cycle. From the lack of affordable housing to the cuts in welfare, the solutions being offered just aren't enough. The shocking part is that we have solutions that work, but they're being ignored. So why isn't the government doing more to end this crisis? What's stopping real change? By the end of this video, you'll understand why the government's response to homelessness is far worse than we've been led to believe. The truth is more alarming than you think, and once you hear it, you'll wonder why nothing's being done to fix it. Number 1. Lack of affordable housing. One of the most critical reasons the UK government is failing the homeless crisis is the severe lack of affordable housing. Despite decades of promises to tackle this issue, the situation remains dire. The demand for housing in the UK far outstrips supply, and affordable housing remains out of reach for many. The problem isn't just that there are fewer houses being built, it's the growing cost of what is available. In cities like London, housing prices have skyrocketed, making it nearly impossible for low-income families and individuals to find a place to live. The government's approach to affordable housing has been largely reactive, focusing on temporary solutions rather than long-term investments. Instead of building enough affordable homes, the government continues to subsidise the housing market through housing benefits and temporary shelters. But these are band-aid solutions that don't address the root of the problem. For instance, people are often forced to rely on private landlords who charge exorbitant rents, leading to a cycle of financial instability and eventual homelessness. What makes matters worse is the lack of clear government strategy. There's a tendency to blame factors like rising population or economic downturns for the housing shortage. But at the heart of it, the real issue lies in the failure to prioritise affordable housing and a reliance on market-driven solutions. Public housing initiatives have been slashed in recent decades, and many local authorities struggle to maintain the few affordable housing projects that still exist. Ultimately, the UK's government is failing the homeless because it hasn't prioritised sustainable housing policies. Until this issue is properly addressed, homelessness will remain a growing concern. We need bold action, not just promises, to create the affordable housing solutions necessary to bring an end to this crisis. Number 2. Insufficient funding for homeless services. Another major reason the UK government is failing the homeless crisis is the insufficient funding for homeless services. While there is public awareness and charitable support, these services are simply not receiving enough resources to make a meaningful impact. The reality is that government funding for homelessness programs is often inconsistent and inadequate, leaving many services to operate on tight budgets, leading to underperformance and staff shortages. The issue isn't just about how much money is allocated, it's about how that money is spent. A significant portion of funding goes into administrative costs, with too little directed towards direct aid for homeless individuals. Shelters and support services that assist with housing placement, mental health counselling, and addiction rehabilitation struggle to meet the demand, especially when funding is reduced or diverted to other priorities. Many of these services are overstretched, resulting in longer waiting times and reduced care for those who need it most. Furthermore, local governments often face budget constraints, which means that even the limited funds they do receive for homelessness programs are stretched thin. In some cases, This leads to a lack of integration between services. For example, someone struggling with homelessness and substance abuse may have to navigate separate services, making it harder for them to receive the holistic care they need to escape their situation. Moreover, the lack of long-term funding creates a cycle of uncertainty for both homeless individuals and the organisations trying to help them. Without consistent financial support, it's difficult for services to plan ahead and develop effective, sustainable solutions. The government's failure to provide adequate funding weakens the entire system, leaving homeless individuals to face a system that is ill-equipped to help them. Until the government commits to properly funding homeless services, real change will remain elusive, and the homeless population will continue to grow. Effective action requires adequate resources, and the government must do more to ensure that these vital services are well funded and accessible to those in need. Number 3. Lack of long-term solutions. One of the most pressing issues contributing to the UK's homelessness crisis is the failure to implement long-term solutions. While the government has focused heavily on short-term relief efforts like emergency shelters and food banks, these approaches don't address the underlying causes of homelessness. People who are temporarily housed in shelters may find themselves back on the streets once these quick fixes come to an end. This revolving door of homelessness only worsens the cycle. What's missing are long-term strategies that can offer individuals sustainable housing and the necessary support to maintain it. Instead of focusing on creating permanent housing solutions, policies are often geared toward temporary fixes, leaving people stuck in limbo. The government needs to prioritise social housing that is both affordable and accessible, but this has often been deprioritised in favour of market-driven solutions. Job training and mental health services also play a crucial role in breaking the cycle of homelessness. However, the government has been reluctant to invest in these programs in a meaningful way. Homelessness isn't just about providing shelter, it's about addressing the root causes, like poverty, lack of education, mental health struggles, and substance abuse. Without comprehensive rehabilitation programs that provide both housing and the skills needed to thrive, many individuals remain stuck in homelessness for years. Affordable housing policies are also too slow to take effect. In many cases, new housing developments take years to complete, leaving homeless individuals in a constant state of uncertainty. By the time these projects are finished, the demand for housing has grown even more intense. The government's reliance on piecemeal solutions rather than a cohesive, long-term approach ensures that homelessness remains a persistent and growing problem. Until the UK government embraces a holistic, long-term plan that includes permanent housing, job training, and mental health support, homelessness will continue to rise, and the crisis will remain unsolved. Only by addressing the issue at its core can the cycle of homelessness be broken. Number 4. Mental health stigma and insufficient support. A significant barrier to tackling homelessness in the UK is the mental health stigma that surrounds it, coupled with the insufficient support available for those suffering from mental health issues. Mental health problems are both a cause and a consequence of homelessness. Many individuals who experience homelessness also struggle with mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, PTSD, or schizophrenia. However, these conditions are often overlooked or treated as secondary concerns, which further entrenches individuals in their homelessness. The UK government's response to mental health within the homeless population has been largely inadequate. While there are some programs aimed at providing mental health support, they are often underfunded and difficult to access. Mental health services tailored specifically to the needs of the homeless are rare, and even when available, these services are oversubscribed and not equipped to handle the growing demand. As a result, many individuals are left to suffer in silence, with no immediate access to the care they desperately need. Moreover, there is a persistent stigma attached to mental health within the homeless community. Public perception often labels homeless individuals as lazy, dangerous, or unmotivated, ignoring the mental health challenges that may have led to their situation. This negative stigma prevents people from seeking help, fearing judgment or rejection. The lack of understanding around mental health issues creates an environment where people are often too ashamed to reach out for support, worsening their isolation. For individuals struggling with both homelessness and mental health conditions, the lack of integrated care is a major hurdle. Coordinated services that combine housing, mental health treatment, and other forms of support are scarce, making it much harder for people to get the help they need. Without proper mental health care, people remain trapped in the vicious cycle of homelessness. To truly address homelessness, the UK government must prioritise the mental health needs of homeless individuals. Only by eliminating the stigma and offering comprehensive support can the cycle of homelessness and mental health issues be broken. Number 5. Failure to address addiction properly. Another critical reason why the UK government is failing the homeless population is its failure to address addiction properly. Addiction is a major factor that both contributes to and exacerbates homelessness, yet government responses have often been disjointed, ineffective, or inadequate. Many individuals experiencing homelessness also battle with substance abuse, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or other forms of addiction. However, addiction treatment programs are often either underfunded or poorly designed for the unique needs of the homeless. The government's approach to addiction treatment for the homeless often relies on punitive measures rather than supportive care. Instead of focusing on rehabilitation and recovery, many homeless individuals battling addiction are criminalised for their behaviour. They may be arrested or incarcerated rather than provided with the rehabilitative support that they need to recover. This creates a vicious cycle. Addiction leads to homelessness, and homelessness further fuels addiction, making it nearly impossible for individuals to escape their situation. Additionally, existing addiction services are often fragmented and difficult for homeless individuals to access. While some shelters may offer temporary relief, they rarely provide the long-term rehabilitation programs necessary for true recovery. The lack of integrated care means individuals who need both housing and addiction support often receive one without the other, rendering their chances of recovery far lower. Comprehensive programs that combine housing, addiction treatment, and mental health support are few and far between, and even those that do exist are not accessible to everyone who needs them. The government needs to recognise that addiction is a health issue, not a criminal one. By shifting focus from punitive action to rehabilitative care, the UK can begin to break the cycle of addiction and homelessness. Integrated, accessible addiction treatment programs are essential to addressing the root causes of homelessness and should be a priority in any strategy aimed at ending the crisis. Without addressing addiction properly, the UK will continue to fail its most vulnerable citizens. Number 6. The housing first model is underutilized. One of the most effective strategies for tackling homelessness is the housing first model, yet it remains underutilized in the UK. Housing first is an approach that prioritizes providing permanent housing to homeless individuals first, without requiring them to be sober or employed beforehand. Once they have stable housing, additional support services such as mental health care, addiction treatment, and job training are introduced. This method has been proven to work in many other countries, including Finland and Canada, where it has significantly reduced homelessness. However, in the UK, it is still not widely implemented, despite the overwhelming evidence of its success. Instead, the UK often relies on a staircase model of homelessness support, which requires individuals to meet specific criteria, such as achieving sobriety or securing employment, before they are eligible for housing. This model assumes that people need to get their lives together before they can be housed, which is not only unrealistic, but also perpetuates the cycle of homelessness. Forcing individuals to meet stringent requirements before offering them stable housing only exacerbates their situation, leaving them in temporary shelters or on the streets, further isolating them and making recovery even harder. The housing first model, in contrast, recognizes that stable housing is a prerequisite for recovery. Once someone has a permanent place to live, they are far more likely to succeed in other areas of life, including employment, mental health, and addiction recovery. Research has shown that housing first leads to higher rates of housing retention, better mental health, and improved overall well-being. For the UK to effectively address homelessness, the government must adopt the housing first model on a larger scale. Providing people with a stable home first, rather than making it a reward for meeting certain conditions, is the most humane and effective way to end homelessness. The UK needs to stop clinging to outdated models and instead embrace proven, evidence-based solutions like Housing First. Number 7. Cuts to social welfare and benefits. One of the key factors contributing to the rising homelessness crisis in the UK is the dramatic cuts to social welfare and benefits. Over the past decade, the government has implemented significant reductions to programs like universal credit, housing benefits, and other social safety nets that were once critical in preventing people from falling into homelessness. These cuts have disproportionately affected the most vulnerable populations, leaving them without the financial stability needed to maintain housing and avoid eviction. The reduction in benefits has made it much harder for low-income individuals and families to afford rising rent costs. With inflation and housing prices continuing to climb, those who are already struggling to make ends meet now have even less financial support to rely on. For many, the difference between keeping a roof over their heads and becoming homeless is the assistance provided by these welfare programs. When that support is taken away, it often leads to eviction, poverty, and ultimately homelessness. Moreover, the application process for benefits has become increasingly complex, with delays, bureaucratic hurdles, and poor communication from government agencies. Many individuals face long waiting times for their claims to be processed, leaving them in limbo without income or housing security. These delays often cause people to miss rent payments, which can result in them being evicted. The cutbacks and administrative inefficiencies in the welfare system create a situation where the most vulnerable are punished for circumstances beyond their control. Social welfare should act as a safety net, helping people avoid homelessness in times of need. By slashing benefits, the government has weakened this safety net, making it harder for individuals to escape the cycle of poverty and homelessness. The restoration and expansion of social benefits is essential to combating homelessness and offering a path to stability for those at risk. Without these crucial supports, the homeless population will only continue to rise. Number 8. Discrimination and social inequality. A significant, yet often overlooked, factor in the UK's homelessness crisis is the discrimination and social inequality faced by certain groups within society. Homelessness does not affect all individuals equally. People from Black, Asian, and minority ethnic (BAME) communities, LGBTQ+ individuals, single mothers, and those with disabilities are disproportionately affected by homelessness due to systemic inequalities that limit their access to housing, employment, and social services. These vulnerable groups face additional barriers that make it even harder for them to escape homelessness. For instance, racial discrimination within the housing market often leads to BAME communities being unfairly denied rental opportunities or forced into substandard housing conditions. Many individuals from these communities are not only more likely to face homelessness, but also encounter racism in the process of trying to secure housing. This leaves them with fewer options and limited access to stable living conditions. Additionally, LGBTQ+ individuals often face rejection and family estrangement due to their sexual orientation or gender identity, leading to increased vulnerability to homelessness. Many young LGBTQ+ people are kicked out of their homes by unsupportive families and are left with little to no support network. Shelters that are supposed to provide refuge often lack the training and understanding to meet the unique needs of these individuals, further marginalising them. Single mothers are another group disproportionately impacted by homelessness. The gender pay gap, lack of affordable childcare, and discriminatory housing policies make it far harder for mothers, especially those raising children alone, to find and maintain stable housing. These mothers are often forced into temporary accommodations or have to rely on the charity sector for survival, until the UK government acknowledges the intersectionality of homelessness and works to dismantle the barriers that prevent these groups from accessing stable housing. The crisis will continue to disproportionately affect the most marginalised. Equality in housing access must become a priority if we are to make any real progress in ending homelessness. Number 9. Lack of public awareness. Another crucial factor contributing to the UK's homelessness crisis is the lack of public awareness surrounding the issue. While homelessness is often seen as a visible problem, people sleeping on the streets or in temporary shelters, the deeper systemic causes are less widely understood. Many people fail to recognise that homelessness is not just about the lack of shelter. It's about a complex combination of poverty, mental health struggles, addiction, and discrimination. This misunderstanding leads to misinformed opinions, which in turn affect how the public views and treats homeless individuals. The public's perception of homelessness is often shaped by stereotypes and negative portrayals in the media. Homeless people are frequently labelled as lazy, drug addicts, or criminals, stereotypes that do not reflect the reality for most individuals experiencing homelessness. This stigmatization results in a lack of empathy, making it harder for homeless individuals to receive the support they need from both society and policymakers. Furthermore, the general public often does not realise how precarious the housing situation is for millions of people in the UK. The rising cost of living, high rent prices, and the reduction of welfare support are putting increasing numbers of people at risk of homelessness. People who live paycheck to paycheck, who may be just one accident or illness away from losing their job, are often invisible to the public eye. Hidden homelessness, such as people staying with friends or in temporary accommodations, is rarely acknowledged, even though it is just as critical as rough sleeping. This lack of awareness contributes to a lack of public pressure on the government to enact change. If the public doesn't fully understand the gravity of the situation, it's unlikely that they will demand urgent action. Raising awareness about the real causes of homelessness, its impact on communities, and the policies that need to change is vital to creating a culture of compassion and collective responsibility. Only when public awareness is raised can there be the kind of political and social change necessary to end the homelessness crisis. Number 10. Political will is lacking. One of the most significant barriers to solving the homelessness crisis in the UK is the lack of political will to tackle the issue effectively. While homelessness is frequently discussed in political speeches and campaigns, real action is often slow, half-hearted, and inconsistent. The government's failure to prioritise homelessness shows a clear disconnect between the urgency of the crisis and the policies being implemented to address it. This lack of commitment is a major reason why the situation continues to worsen year after year. Politicians often treat homelessness as a temporary problem that can be managed with quick fixes, such as funding more shelters or offering temporary housing. However, these short-term solutions do little to address the root causes of homelessness, such as affordable housing shortages, mental health issues, and poverty. Rather than tackling these fundamental issues, the government frequently opts for piecemeal approaches that don't lead to lasting change. In addition, political decisions are often driven by short-term electoral gains rather than long-term solutions. Homelessness can be a politically sensitive issue, with some political parties hesitant to implement bold reforms for fear of backlash or because they believe other issues, like the economy or immigration, are more pressing. This results in a lack of consistent policy development and makes it difficult to create a unified, comprehensive strategy for tackling homelessness in the UK. Moreover, the government's funding commitments are often insufficient to make a real impact. While there are occasional increases in funding for homelessness services, these are often temporary or insufficient in addressing the scale of the problem. Underfunded services, reduced support for local authorities, and bureaucratic inefficiencies ensure that even the best-intentioned policies often fall short of their potential. If the UK is to effectively end homelessness, there needs to be a fundamental shift in political will. Bold policies, long-term commitments, and consistent funding are essential to ensure that homelessness is not just talked about, but actively addressed with the urgency it requires. Without political will, the crisis will continue to deepen, and the lives of homeless individuals will remain in limbo. The facts speak for themselves. The UK government's failure to address homelessness is not just a matter of oversight. It's a systemic issue that continues to trap thousands in a life of uncertainty. From inadequate housing policies to cuts in vital services, the system is broken, and without real change, the crisis will only continue to worsen. It's time for action, not just empty promises. If this video opened your eyes to the truth about homelessness in the UK, we want to hear from you. What do you think needs to change? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We put in a lot of effort to bring these important issues to light, and your input matters. And if you found this video valuable, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It's just one click, and it helps us continue to make these hard-hitting videos. We can't do it without your support, so hit that button and join the conversation. Together, we can make a difference.